Order. First order of business is roll call. Commissioner Buttleman is not here as of yet. Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Okeson?
Here.
Commissioner Paltzer?
Here.
Commissioner Redmond is here. Commissioner Reese has retired from the commission, so he is no longer here, and his sort of role terminates now. Commissioner Sin?
Here.
We're all
Mr.
accounted
Chair,
for.
I am remembering now that Commissioner Buttleman did tell me the last meeting that he will not be in attendance this
Okay.
month, so.
All right. Well, he's holding true to that.
He didn't lie.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Sin. There's a second.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of the agenda? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next item of business is approval of the meeting minutes from December 17th, 2018.
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from the Monday, December 17th meeting as submitted.
Motion by Commissioner Paltzer. Is there a second?
Sure, I second.
Second by Okeson. Okay, are there any edits or comments on the minutes? Okay, if not, all in favor of approval of the meeting minutes, aye?
Aye.
And one abstention?
And one abstention?
Two.
Two abstentions? Motion carries. All right, item 5, new business, election of chair and vice chair. Cannot recall if we've done this in the past, but I suppose we can just open the floor for
Nominations.
nominations for chair. I guess we'll do, we'll open up for chair first and then vice chair.
Is, just thinking with Commissioner Buttleman not here, I don't know that anyone's spoken with him about if he was interested or,
But you can always pile
Probably-
on when they're absent, I think.
that's true. But at the same time, knowing that Commissioner Reese, as he's left, I think it's important that we do still go through with the election. Is that still work, even though he's absent tonight, do you think?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Palzer, so I was looking at our procedures, that we'll be reviewing tonight, and I remember we put in there years back that people interested in becoming chair should make it known in December so that everyone has a whole month to ponder it, but not that you have to do that. I just wanted to point that out. It is in the procedures. And then in January, you should appoint. But if you don't need to appoint because we do have Commissioner Redmond is our vice chair right now, serving as chair. So if you feel more comfortable doing it, maybe you could make an announcement if you want to be chair, then do it in February, or do
That's
the
a lovely
elections tonight.
suggestion. Then perhaps Commissioner Buttleman will be here by then and can participate. So. Commissioner Miller?
Just a question per policy, and I probably should know this, but would it be a good idea to, maybe email our interest or non-interest and then have that as part of something that we look at as our packet of people that are interested, and we can vote then in February?
Mr. Chair, so it's up to the commission on how you want to handle this. Certainly, if people feel more comfortable submitting their interest in private, but of course, people will eventually know.
I think I would recommend if someone has a feeling at this point to go ahead and throw their hat out in the ring, and then we'll collect those, and then perhaps say through the end of the week here, well, let's say Monday, because it's a short week. by Monday, if there's interest, just notify us via email as a group, and then we'll create the list.
That sounds like a wonderful idea.
So as a reminder for the commissioners, it is a one-year term to sit as chair and vice chair, and responsibility of chair generally, of course, is to run the meeting, and then whenever we have any items that go to our city council, you would attend and present representing the commission, unless, of course, you're unavailable, and you appoint someone else. So, I'm hearing that, because of the open meeting laws and all that, why don't I email you and you email me back if you're interested, and then we'll bring it back in February. I'll also be able to touch base with Commissioner Buttleman, and then we'll have some people to present as nominees. Perfect. Okay, thank you.
All right, so unless anybody wants to throw out their hat now, we'll take that item and hold it over until February. Going once, going twice. All right. Next item is 1603 Mary Street North, wetland buffer variance for an addition to a single-family home.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. So I will be presenting a wetland buffer request that the city has received. I have a few visuals for you here. So this request is from Anne Rivard. She is the owner of 1603 Mary Street North, and she is proposing to construct a four-season porch addition to the back side of her home. And as you can see on the aerial photo here, the home is located next to a managed bee wetland. The managed bee wetland is identified in green there. And Anne's house on 1603 Mary Street was constructed in 1988, and it's located 50 feet from that managed bee wetland. The backyard currently consists of mowed grass with a 20-foot wide rock bed, which is adjacent that wetland. The city's wetland ordinance does require a 75-foot buffer around a managed bee wetland. And within that buffer, no mowing, cutting, grading, or building is allowed within the buffer. But this property is considered a pre-existing non-conforming lot since there is no wetland buffer being maintained adjacent to wetland at this time. And again, due to the fact that it was built in 1988 prior to those ordinance requirements. So here we have a site plan. It shows the location of that addition. The four-season porch addition will be 16 feet deep by 14 feet wide for a total of 252 square feet in area. The existing home is located within 50 feet of that managed bee wetland, as you can see. And the addition will encroach further into the backyard and be located within 32 feet of the wetland. So in order to construct this addition, the city would have to approve a 43-foot wetland buffer variance because, again, it's coming to within 32 feet of the wetland where it is required to be 75 feet. The city's wetland ordinance, I should point out, does allow additions to pre-existing non-conforming single-family homes if the addition does not encroach closer to the wetland than the existing home. And when the city adopted the ordinance, we wanted to ensure that houses such as this, the residents were able to maintain the home as, they grew and their lives changed. So there was some language put into the ordinance that allowed for what we called this straight edge setback. So if you built an addition, as long as it didn't encroach further into the wetland buffer, that would be allowed. And in this case, you can kind of see if you were to do an addition behind the garage, that would qualify as this straight edge addition. But because of the layout of the house, it really wasn't practical to do that four-season porch in that area. So Ann and our architect did look at that option, but it just did not work. So I wanted to show you a few examples that Ann has submitted for what this four-season porch would look like. I think you're just kind of looking at the architectural style here because, of course, this one is just a kind of a covered roof, but it kind of gives you the idea of the style. And then the second one, the one on the bottom, kind of reflects this overhang that Anne is hoping for. So you can see it's going to be a nice quality addition to that home. State law does require that variances be permitted when they are found to be, three standards here: in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the official control, consistent with the comprehensive plan, and when there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control. So the applicant, Anne, does state that she would like to construct a four-season porch in order to use her pre-existing non-conforming property in a reasonable manner. And city staff looked at this and determined that the construction of an addition to the back of this home will allow the homeowner to create a more livable space and will not alter the character of the neighborhood. So our city code does detail mitigation strategies that the city can implement when approving a wetland buffer. So we took a strong look at that. City staff is that is. And again, mitigation can be anywhere from adding a rain garden to capture the stormwater runoff before it runs into the wetland, to restoring the wetland buffer, and other best management practices such as that. In this case, we examined two options. One would be the rain garden, capturing just the stormwater that's running off that addition, and the second being adding a buffer of native plants near that wetland. And since the backyard is completely mowed grass, currently no real native plantings, we did determine that planting a buffer of native plants near that wetland would allow the stormwater runoff from that entire site to filter into the buffer prior to entering that wetland. So we're recommending that as a mitigation strategy. And when you try to determine, what would mitigate this, we recently have, in some of the other examples, just kind of take a look at the impacts that it's having. So in this case, it's 252 square feet that's being added to the wetland buffer itself. So we are proposing that the wetland buffer planting be at least 252 square feet in area, and at a minimum. And then that we're proposing to be located directly behind the addition in one of two areas, either along the east edge of the rock bed within the mowed grass area, or within the rock bed, removing the rock and planting native vegetation in their place. So whatever is determined to be probably the most feasible to the applicant. And of course, when working with single-family residential properties, we know it's just the homeowner and having to bear those expenses. So giving some alternatives, I think, is appropriate in this instance. So with that, city staff is recommending approval of the wetland buffer variance for 1603 Mary Street. And that is the approval with the condition of those mitigations. And this variance will then go to the Planning Commission for a public hearing, and that is scheduled for February 19th, and then final review by the City Council on February 25th. And tonight, we do have Anne Rivard here to answer any of your questions as well. So, thank you.
Does the applicant have anything that she'd like to add to the presentation?
Good evening. Thank you for listening to my appeal or my buffer variance.
I don't think the microphone's. Which might be on the underside of the microphone.
Sorry, Anne.
Oh, there's a problem.
Check, check, check.
There we go.
Thank you.
I'm fumbling myself. There we are.
Okay. Okay, is that better?
Yes.
That's
Okay.
good.
Thank you for giving the time to present this wetland buffer that I'm hoping that you'll approve. It's time. I've been saving for a number of years. I want to be able to enjoy my backyard, just like all my neighbors. And most of my neighbors, if not all of them, on the same side that I'm on, either have a porch, a 3-season or 4-season deck that can enjoy the wildlife and the views out the backyard. I'd like to do the same. So, back in '88, when I bought it, I realized it was a good investment, was close to work, and I needed a place to live because of my circumstances at the time, and it was a good investment. And now, over the years, I've done many, many improvements to my home, and this is now the next step. Fortunately, I did not realize until I contracted with a architect to kind of see what my options were, because on the back side of the house where I want to do this addition, I was actually looking at a 2-level because I've got a big patio off my kitchen, and then the lower level, which is the family room. I wanted to combine those together. Well, it just wouldn't work because of the little bit of elevation that I had in the back. The stairs that would have had to been put in place wouldn't have given me that option. So the next was to go straight out off the kitchen. There is, as the diagram showed, a lot of grass that I currently mow in the back, and I was not able to do that down the hill towards the pond. And there is, in my yard, unlike some of my neighbors, I have a fairly deep, steep before it goes down to the pond. And I had tried a couple of things over the years, and the last, of course, was putting in these rocks. And before I did call the city at that time, and that, I want to say, was around 2000, and told them where I lived and this, that, and I said, you know, I got a pond in the back, but it's more like a swamp. And the gentleman laughed at me. And he said, I know exactly where you are. And I said, okay, this is what I'd like to do. Is this going to be an issue? Because I thought I don't want to put these rock in and then find out it's not. And yes, I was given approval at that time. That has worked out fairly well for me, keeping up the maintenance and that, and has not affected the pond that I can see. And with that said, I think I'd be okay with everything that I've seen and people that have looked at it, that doing this addition is the right thing. And then I can enjoy it like the rest of my neighbors, the backyard. So with that, I'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
I think my primary question just would be, you know, the recommendations that staff made, are those things that you're willing and able to work within those?
I think so, because I already took the initiative today and sent out an email to Sean to say, okay, based on this, I want to make sure that I meet your requirements. Can you recommend a specialist that works with native plants? So I make sure I get the right, and then see what kind of options that I have based on what I've got here. Now, I see that the minimum would be, and, you know, I'm going to look at all the options, at least 5 feet in width, 6 feet, 1 foot deep. Unless it is with native shrubs, then it would be double that size. So I'm going to have this individual that Sean had given me, I'm going to start there and have him come out and give me an idea of, okay, this is what I have to live with. Give me the options. Does it make sense to do it in the rock bed? Does it make sense to do it above the rock bed? What size makes sense? And then, based on all these plants and stuff, and I don't know if you guys know this, but I have a lot of deer in the neighborhood. I don't want to plant something that I'm never going to see if they're going to eat it. So I want to make sure that whatever bushes that I select or whatever native plants that I select that are deer resistant, and hopefully some of these are. Because there's at least 15 deer in the neighborhood and turkeys and such. So I gotta take that into consideration and how I build this and what type of plants. Although I hope that a lot of these will be okay, and I hope they bring the colors that I'm looking, like the fall reds and stuff. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
Question for staff. Is there any, it doesn't mention, but is there any significant trees that are going to be removed?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sin, well,
I have one tree that is in the rock bed, but it's on the north side, which would be on the opposite side of where this addition would be added. And then above the rock on the north side, I have a berm that has 3 evergreens in it. They would not be affected.
thank you for answering that.
Yeah,
Hey, Mr. Hart,
sure.
actually, I think it was answered. Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? Thank you. I think
Thank you
we're-
very much.
we're good. Thank you. Any comments from the commission? Any motions anybody would like to make at this point, or?
State law says in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official control. What does that mean? It's number 1 on page 2 under state law, in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the official control. I'm not sure I understand what that means.
Just that so this area is all zoned residential, so it's kind of in harmony with the existing residential character, is how I would interpret that.
Yeah.
The official control being it's zoned, single dwelling. So if we were doing a wetland buffer variance for,
Got it.
I don't know, a triplex in a single-family zone, that clearly doesn't meet the official control.
Thank you.
I guess I would, kind of thinking of, most of this area that is affected is currently mowed, so there's not any buffer necessarily in there right now. I think with the mitigation strategies, it's an improvement. In a lot of ways, it sounds like Mr. Vard is happy to implement the mitigation strategies that staff recommended. So my thought is, I don't know if we're ready, if we have more discussion, or if we're ready to make a motion, but I'd make a motion to approve the variance.
I'm just concerned. Are there, so if all these plants get planted, rain gardens puts in, all this stuff happens, what's gonna stop somebody years from now after the house is sold from tearing it all out?
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Okeson, our wetland ordinance does restrict what you can do in a wetland buffer. And if your wetland buffer is already native plants, you can't go in and turn it into mowed grass. Of course, that would be dependent on someone letting us know that it happened, which we've seen. But yeah, currently there's an ordinance that states that once it's naturalized and native plants, you can't go back in and convert it back to non-native mowed grass.
I'm willing to second the motion that Commissioner Palzer put forward. I actually think that it'll give you a lot more enjoyability without looking at a whole bunch of rocks to have that natural, native stuff back there. And I, too, feel the pain of turkeys and deer.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Sin?
Sorry, I just want to make sure, Commissioner Polzer, can you state your motion again?
Yeah, I guess when I
It wasn't clear to me, the
Yep.
whole thing.
Yeah, when I said it, I wasn't sure if there was going to be more discussion. I was just kind of saying my opinion, and then if that's the case, I would make. So my motion would be to approve the wetland buffer variance for this address, with the staff recommendations for the mitigation strategies.
And I second it.
And the cash escrow.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just for my own comment, I look very carefully at variances and tend not to like supporting them. In this instance, I think that's a different story. This feels like a reasonable variance, and I think the staff recommendations offer a reasonable solution that actually should probably help a betterment for the project if done well. So I certainly am in favor of the motion. So.
Yep.
Unless there's any other comments, all in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
I'm going to abstain.
You're abstaining?
Okay.
4 and 1 abstention. Motion carries. Great, thank you. Next on the agenda is 2659 Geranium Avenue East, lot division, reduced front yard setback authorization, and a wetland buffer variance for a new single-family home.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. This proposal is being requested by Ben Thone of Thone Builders. He is proposing to subdivide the lot at 2657 Geranium Avenue into 3 lots. Parcel A will contain the existing single-family home, and parcels B and C will be developed with new single-family homes. So some background on this property. Ben Thone purchased the property at 2657 Geranium Avenue last year in hopes of subdividing it into 3 parcels. Again, 1 lot for the existing home and 2 lots to develop for new single-family homes. The subdivision of the parcel into 3 lots requires administrative review and approval by city staff, normally if it meets the required lot dimension and setbacks. So the applicant had submitted the lot division application for review by city staff. However, during the survey work on the property, it was discovered that there was a wetland that is located on the northeast side of the lot. The wetland was not identified in the city, watershed district, or national wetland maps, so it caught us all off guard. So the applicant had the wetland delineated, and Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District approved the delineation as is required by the Watershed District, and then they also classified the wetland as a managed sea wetland. So on the lot division itself, after learning that there was a wetland, city staff worked with the applicant to create a development plan that would have the least amount of impacts on the newly discovered wetland. By meeting the minimum lot width requirements for parcel A and B, which is 75 feet in width and at least 10,000 square feet. Of course, these are larger. So making sure that those met just the minimum, it allowed parcel C to be larger and the development of the new single-family home to be located as far away from the wetland as possible. So originally, the original proposal reflected that parcel B and C would require a wetland buffer variance. But in working with the applicant to adjust the size of the lot, especially on C, and also the location of the house further to, closer to the street, we've reduced that to just a variance on that parcel C lot. I wanted to show you a couple examples of the homes that Mr. Thone is proposing to construct on these 2 new single-family lots, if, of course, the wetland buffer variance is approved on parcel C. So he sent us some examples of that, so you're familiarized with what would be built on parcel C and B as well. So again, in this case, state law requires that variances shall only be permitted when they are found to be in harmony with the general purpose and intent of the official control, consistent with the comprehensive plan, and when there are practical difficulties in complying with the official control. So the applicant does state in his narrative that the construction of the new single-family home on parcel C will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood, as it is surrounded by all single-family residential homes. And the wetland buffer variance will ensure there is a family-friendly rear yard use instead of just right up to a buffer there, or up next to the wetland, I should say. City staff also finds that the new single-family home is in harmony with the surrounding residential use. Again, city code does state that a city can add mitigation strategies when approving a wetland buffer variance, such as rehabilitating or restoring the buffer. So in reviewing this proposal, city staff took a look at the overall square footage that was going to be impacted. So what portion of this development was going to be graded or disturbed within the buffer? So on the survey itself, I asked the applicant to submit kind of the house foundation plans and then where the extent of the grading for that house would be located. And you can see that the grading encroaches and impacts 1,622 square feet of area within that buffer. Of course, we don't have the exact house footprint, but according to what was submitted, the new single-family home on parcel C will be constructed 10 feet closer to the road than city code allows, thus that reduced front yard setback authorization. And then grading for that home will come to within 30 feet of the managed C wetland, where a 50-foot setback or 50-foot buffer is required. So in this instance, a 20-foot wetland buffer variance is required in order to develop on parcel C. So to mitigate the impacts of the development of that new single-family home, city staff is recommending installation of at least, number one, 3 wetland buffer signs along the edge of the approved buffer on parcel C. The sign should indicate that no building, grading, mowing, or cutting is permitted within that buffer. And then restoration of the wetland buffer as follows, including a minimum of 1,622 square feet in area to be reestablished with native plantings. And those should be planted with Minnesota native plants, not seed in a mulch bed. So we would look at that planting plan prior to issuance of a grading permit on that site. And with this proposal, it is also going to our Planning Commission and City Council. And the Planning Commission public hearing date is scheduled for February 19th, and City Council final review is scheduled for February 25th. So with that, I did want to note that the applicants are here tonight along with their wetland representative, specialist. And they're here for questions. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Sean, I have a few questions right off the bat for you. The first is, do we know how the wetland area and current buffer are currently being treated?
Mr. Chair, are you referring to what condition is the buffer in?
Yeah,
Okay.
the buffer and the wetland itself, being that this was all just discovered?
It's all mowed grass.
Okay, that's its current condition? Okay. The second question I have for you is a clarification on your recommended mitigation strategy number 1. It says signs along the edge of the approved buffer. Am I understanding correct that as it stands right now, the approved buffer would be 30 feet from the edge of the wetland?
Correct.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you right now would be, if I understand correctly, you are not currently recommending an escrow requirement?
Oh, thank you for pointing that out. I could have, I missed that on the staff report, but I wonder on the resolution attached. Oh, yes, I apologize for that confusion. So, when we formally adopt this with the city council, they would be adopting this variance resolution, which is attachment 5, and it does have that cash escrow information on there. So that would be included in staff's recommendation as well.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to add anything?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Sean, thank you. I think explained it pretty well. My name is Tim Thone. My son Ben and I are the applicants, and Wayne is here for our environmental specialist who's been doing this since 1991, and he'll be able to answer more of the detailed questions than myself. The only thing that I want to mention on this particular property is the existing homeowner who lived there for, I think, around 30 or 40 years. This used to be 3 platted lots. It was platted, and due to economic benefits for him, he eliminated the PID numbers and combined 1 lot. The other thing that I want to mention, yes, it's a C, it's a minimal wetland. It wasn't always a wetland. There's a stormwater pipe that we realized in the middle of the property that's located where the M is on the site plan of manage, that we found right in the middle. It was plugged. Now, there were 40-year-old trees that grew up in the middle of the wetland that had died. And I think yes, it's mowed, but if it was managed properly from the storm, I don't think there'd have been a wetland there in the first place. I think that it does fit the comprehensive plan. I think our setbacks are equal to the neighbors. They're very large lots. They're very deep lots. And I think that what Sean had suggested, and our engineer who had some duties tonight for some kid stuff who was unable to be here, we came to this mitigation or ending as the best, and we've been working on it for a while, and I think it's actually turned out to be not a bad solution with the front yard setback and so on, with the neighbors being, as basically the same as ours. So with that, I'll just let you go with questions.
I have one question for you right off the bat, which is, do you currently own these
Yes.
lots? You've purchased them from
Yep.
the previous
Yep.
owner, and you're now the owner?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions for the applicant?
Tom can go.
Tom?
I don't know if you can answer this, or Sean, so the pipe or whatever that collapsed?
Yeah.
Has
Well-
it been repaired?
Yeah, we fixed it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So if it's believed that that's what created the wetland was the pipe collapsing, so the water sat there, so if the pipe's been fixed, does that mean the wetland's gonna go away?
Well, Wayne, do you want to talk about that? That's kind of our, I'll let Wayne answer that, but
Okay.
yes.
I'm just wondering,
But-
like, 40
but
years from now,
As the
is
years
there
go
not
on,
gonna be
we did have the water shut out, and our suggestion is let time show
Show.
that. But, is that fair? Or do you want to answer that?
Sure. Mr. Chair, members of the commission, my name is Wayne Jacobson. I'm a wetland delineator certified professional soil scientist, associate fisheries scientist. I've been working in wetlands since 1992 here in Minnesota. And I guess, in this case, to answer that question, will the wetland go away? It won't go away immediately, or it'll be a fairly long period of time, because the wetland has developed a dominance of hydrophytic vegetation, and the hydric soil indicators are there, and there is adequate hydrology right now. And so for that to go away is going to take quite a period of time probably. So I don't see, even in 10 years, that any of that hydrology would be removed, to the point where the wetland would go away. It is true that it's likely that the wetland was created by that failed pipe. And we did approach the Board of Water and Soil Resources that supervises the local government units, in this case, the Ramsey Washington Metro Watershed District. And a gentleman for this area, his name is Ben Meyer, he looked at some old aerial photographs, and his conclusion is that there was hydric soil or wetland soil in the area historically, he felt. And so he didn't not want to get us what we call a created wetland exemption, or what we call a no loss, according to the rules, which is available sometimes when there's blocked pipes or, beavers build dams, there's all kinds of things that happen out there. But, again, in this case, he didn't feel it was appropriate to issue an exemption. So what we have is a wetland, and then we're trying to do our best to make a wetland buffer that is going to be full of native grasses and wildflowers that's going to add to the character, of the edge of the wetland.
Question for Ben.
Yes.
So, I looked at this, I can't seem to find what the square footage of the house is going to be.
Yes, the 1,200 square feet main floor, 1,100 to 1,200 square foot main floor with the possibility to be the same on upper for the two-story, so 2,200 square foot two-story. Approximately 1,100 square foot main floor.
So given that, utilizing that square footage, that's what was used to determine your variance, is that correct? John?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Sin, I used the impact of the grading.
Right.
So I requested that they reflect how close towards the wetland they'll be grading. It looks like the house itself will maintain the required, quote, setback or buffer, but the grading within the buffer encroaches that, whatever it was, 1,900 square feet.
Yep. That's correct.
Just a second, I got to follow up. So if we were going to have a house that didn't have such large square footage, we wouldn't have so much encroachment by construction. Correct? I'm just trying to figure out if maybe the size of the house is a little too large for this. Getting
Well,
close to the
and how we
wetland.
came up with the house was just basically consistent in the neighborhood. The smallest house was 924 square feet, and the largest house was, I think, 2,400 square feet, 2,900 square feet, and ours is 1,100 square feet. I think it's in the packet, but 1,100 square foot on a footprint is sort of a minimal square footage, and that's basically how it came up with, as well as consistency inside the neighborhood. One thing we don't want to do is we want to be consistent with the neighborhood, which is not smaller than the other houses, not larger than the other houses, but I guess the word that somebody's used around here was harmony inside the neighborhood, and I believe that this is the average. It is in the packet. If you want to find it, Sean, what are consistent, there was, I think, 924, and then,
Are you
So I
referring
think that
to
the-
your narrative, Mr. Chair? I'm posing a question to the applicant. Sounds like he's referring to his narrative here in regard to the size of the lots. It
Oh.
says, it fits with the existing neighborhood. The main floor will be approximately 1,100 square feet in size, to be built with potential additional square footage on the second level. This fits the neighborhood well. The 5 nearest adjacent homes currently range from 952 square feet up to 2,320 square feet.
It looks like the other homes in the area don't have a wetland on their adjacent to there. So it looks like this particular lot has got the wetland. I don't see any of these other houses. I'm just trying to say, it's fine to have that size house if you're comparing it to other houses in the neighborhood, but they're not up against the wetland, is my question. Someone's gonna answer that?
No, I just have,
First-
is it okay if I approach him? Oh, I'm sorry.
Commissioner Peltzer's been waiting patiently.
Oh, no,
and
I
then-
don't, no.
Are you
You
done?
can skip me.
Okay.
I-
Commissioner Miller?
I just looked it up on Google Maps. Is it okay if I go show him and make sure that this is the right parcel? Because I think looking at this kind of changed my attitude towards it quite a bit.
Sure, if you think
So
that's helpful.
is that okay if I
Sure.
come and show? Okay.
I'm still very much in my formulating questions mode, and a few of them have been answered. It's a confusing plot of land.
Just, let me say, just.
Here's, I'm thinking.
Yes, that's it, and this is it here.
This is
Mhm.
B, and then, so this is all grass, except for this
Right.
dead trees right here, and a couple of the.
Yeah, this is it. This is,
Okay.
so this is B and C.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Because right now, right, I don't know, this really helped me, just because I couldn't quite figure, so this is the house right here, and then this is B, and then this is C, so right now, it's all mowed grass, that's not, and then there's a tree that is mowed. So, okay, anyway, my point for that.
I mean, a C is the lowest, as
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes it can be hard to identify. Sometimes it can be just some native grasses that show up, even though, so.
Right, and my main reason for doing that is because I'm kind of seeing that you were responsible stewards of this land and fixed the pipe and was like, okay, well, we want to get this buffer, as in right now, it's all mowed. It doesn't look like it's actually very good grass either.
Yeah.
So my view of this is we're kind of creating a natural area where there isn't one right now.
That's correct. And I think it'll be a nice for the neighborhood, too.
Okay. So there will be native plants and bushes and stuff. Okay, so that was my point. I just wanted to kind of give you a visual because I can't see this right now. I'm getting old.
Any other questions?
I had maybe just a couple that were remaining. So the house on parcel A is going to stay as is, right? There's no reconstruction to that. So building on B and C, and just looking at the, how close they are in together, and I know that B doesn't encroach, so there's no mitigation strategies or variance needed with that, but I'm curious if, it seems that it'll be a little bit strange, but I guess it'll be two different families living there. If you have kind of an enhanced backyard with the with the mitigation strategies and the native plantings put in B. I don't know if when you're
But we
developing
didn't
that,
want
if
to
you're maybe.
overreach, I think, is what it really came down to.
Yeah.
So B, we don't need a variance on.
Yep.
It's just, and we determined that if we did some adjustment, we would just need one variance on one lot. And we kind of came to the conclusion it might be slightly overreaching, just because variances it's a touchy thing. There are three requirements that are needed to get a variance, and they're difficult to get. And I've been only doing this for 40 years and built my share in Maplewood as well as the Twin Cities area. And, there has to be some certain times and conditions and elements that get it. And frankly, this happens to be probably one of them. We've worked really hard. We put a lot of time into this.
Yeah, this
Since
is a little bit of a surprise when you receive that. I did have a question about, so the attachment 5 is the, let me look at the title real quick here. The variance resolution. And then in our packet, it discussed the tree plan, that there are significant trees. Does any statement about the significant trees and having the tree plan need to be in that variance, or since it's trees and wetland variance, it's not mentioned in there?
Just so you know, we're not touching any trees for the construction because they're outside
Okay.
of everything. They're frankly, they're dead, but there's nothing that we need to remove.
Okay.
There's no large trees that we need to remove to build.
Mr. Chair and Commissioner Palzer, I know in other variances we had mentioned a tree plan, but regardless if you do or don't, it's a requirement of our city code that
Okay.
any vacant lot, they submit a tree plan, and we determine if there's any removal. But you could add, just to be certain,
Complete about it or something.
no removal of significant trees.
Okay. So it's assumed, but wouldn't hurt to say. Is that
And
what
then
you're-
again,
are thinking?
it sounds like there won't be any
Well,
removal of
the-
significant
the-
trees, but just
The law
making that
that's in
clear.
place there for the trees is very,
There's,
yeah.
the-
No, I get it. I am very familiar with the tree ordinance, but it is not on attachment 5, which is what would move forward from here. So I was curious if we needed to add any statement about the tree plan on the variance resolution attachment specifically. It doesn't sound like we need to do, just because that's in place and assumed, so I'm okay with that.
You picked up without, it wouldn't hurt if you wanted to add it. So, Commissioner Miller?
Yes, I just have one quick question. Because the wetland goes into parcel B, would you guys be open to planting some native things where the entire wetland is, over both? Is that what you meant by overreaching?
well,
Or-
well, I think the overreaching was asking for more
Asking
than
for
we
the
need, and
variance.
just,
Sure.
you know. Typically, and I have no problem with what you just suggested, but by the time we get done, if there are trees that are box elders or not specific species we enjoy, we typically enhance them with something that's a little bit more newer in the world. So, and putting some shrubs in, that's one of the reasons that we've hired, Wayne, is to do a design, and it
Okay.
will linger into Lot B.
That's what I was asking, yep.
Yeah.
To kind of make it flow.
Any other questions or comments? Would anybody want to entertain a motion or put forth a motion?
Mr. Chair, I just want to clarify, this is, the city will be approving a lot division also. Of course, you're not looking at that aspect of it. So there are certain conditions that a city can add to a lot division itself. And one thing that I wanted to add when I brought this to the Planning Commission, just to the lot division conditions, was to ensure that we have those wetland buffer signs around the wetland along parcel B. Even though that's not getting a variance, we want to ensure that we don't have any impacts into what remains of the buffer. And it sounds like they'd be willing to add some of those native plantings. I'm sure it would make it a more desirable lot, too.
Okay.
So you could also just make sure it's in your motion, too, if you want it. Sorry for the confusion. And then I think I heard that maybe some trees would be coming down after we...
I thought he mentioned that they were just dead ones.
There's some dead ones there, and sometimes when you put sewer and water in through the front, there might be a front tree, but the trees that are there are they're not on the endangered species list, I doubt. They're not well taken care of. But right now, I don't think there's no trees where the house goes,
Yeah, but these would
or in the lot.
except for the dead ones.
Do sometimes the trees get taken down due to a driveway's in the way or something like that? That could certainly happen on the boulevard, but I don't want to just misconstrue this, but there's nothing in the building site. But we will add deciduous trees on the lot. One of them is this, I'm sure that when we pull a building permit, there's a list of deciduous trees. We got to build a front yard boulevard, and a couple of them.
So I'm hearing clearly that your intent is to follow the city's tree ordinance, and you're familiar with the tree ordinance.
Yes, I'm assuming that's still intact. Things change, but Maplewood, so. But yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions? Any motions to put forth?
Well, I want to make sure that both Lot B and C have the wetland buffer restoration sort of part where you put all the plants in.
We can't require that B has a
Because it doesn't
mitigation
have the-
strategy, because it
okay.
doesn't require a variance. So it B, that's why they divided it that way, so that B just
Yeah,
as is.
as is.
C is the only
Okay.
parcel that we can
All
make
right.
any recommendation on with the way that it currently is divided.
All right.
I will make a motion to, for approval of the wetland buffer variance, subject to the following, or the conditions put forward in attachment 5. So that's the wetland buffer sign plan, the wetland buffer restoration, with a minimum of 1,622 square feet of restoration. Minnesota native plants included in that, the cash escrow, and then since we were talking about it, that all of this is going to be following our Maplewood tree plan as well.
I'll second it.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Great, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and have a good night.
Yeah,
You too.
thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, in our commission rules of procedure. It sounds very official.
Exciting too, I'm sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. We will be reviewing the rules of procedure. So the Environmental and Natural Resources Commission did create rules of procedure. Early on, it was adopted October of 2008, and then was amended once since that time. And of course, the rules help keep a orderly meeting. The rules do state that they can be amended at any regular meeting by a majority vote. So we thought it'd be a good time to review those rules. We haven't looked at those in a while. And there's 2 revisions that staff caught and would like to recommend changing tonight. First is the name of the Community Development Department. Our department has undergone a few variations of names, but we're back to Community Development Department. So we would change the Environmental and Economic Development Department to, again, Community Development Department. And the other change being proposed is on visitor presentations. So I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but the City Council last year did eliminate the visitor presentation section from their agenda. So removing this from the Environmental and Natural Resources and other commission agendas will be consistent with the City Council's agenda policy. But I wanted to reiterate that it would not eliminate visitors from speaking at a meeting entirely, as a visitor could call and be placed on an agenda, or, if someone happened to attend your meeting and you wanted to ensure that they were heard, the rules do state that you can temporarily suspend the rules and allow that visitor to speak by a majority vote of the commissioners present. So again, that's consistent with City Council policy. And they wanted to ensure that all other commissions had that consistency. So that's why that is being recommended to you here tonight. So with that, city staff is recommending a revision of the rules, and any other items that you see that need some addressing.
Thank you, Sean. Anyone have any questions? Or Commissioner Miller?
I actually am not in favor of taking the visitation or visitor presentations away. I would like more participation, especially since we haven't had any problems or issues come up where we've had to do any kind of adjustments for any other reason. I think that we've all had pretty respectful and responsible visitor presentations when we do have them, and I think that sends out the wrong message for us. I know that City Council's had a lot more difficulty with their visitor presentations, but I feel like at the commission level, I want as much input as possible when we're changing people's life for the better, I'm hoping. So that's just my opinion, but I feel kind of strongly about that.
I think, I mean, I welcome what you were saying, and I wouldn't disagree at all. I certainly don't disagree with the intent, and I mean, we usually have to battle people to, keep them quiet back there, but I too would, I think having people participate, share their ideas, their feelings is positive. I'm not certain that I see this as squelching that. In particular, if I could see where we could articulate on the agenda that visitors are more than welcome to indicate that they would like to have a presentation and that they simply must indicate that, and that the commission would take that under consideration and vote to allow that, or offer an alternative, like please come back next month. And I think there is some advantage to doing that, in that sometimes there might be an agenda that's very lengthy, there might be lots of issues, who knows what could happen. And the ability to have the opportunity to say to a visitor, if this isn't like urgent, maybe, how about if you come back next month and we'll put you in the front of the agenda or something, we can be more guided in terms of how we include them. And I think the intent of this, as I perceive it, there's an advantage if somebody has a specific issue that they really want to talk about, and we have a sense that, hey, this could be divisive, this could be exciting, this could be engaging. Maybe there are others that want to talk about it. By putting it on another meeting, we have actually the opportunity to drum up more engagement over that, right? By letting it be known that it'll be talked about next month, it could have other folks show up. So I think I would tend to speak in favor of this, with the caveat that as a commission, we could certainly have a standing footer on all of our agendas that somehow articulates that we're, please let us know if you'd like to speak at the commission, and we'll take it under consideration and allow that if appropriate and possible, or something like that. We can come up with a good term for it.
Would it make?
Commissioner Okeson first,
I'm sorry.
and then.
I see our position here as being servants to the city, to the people. We should not make it more difficult for people to talk to us.
Would anybody be open to saying that it's not on our agenda unless somebody's here, like you said? But to the same effect, the commissioner presentations, they should be known ahead of time as well. And if you know what I mean, same kind of thing. Like maybe have visitor and commissioner presentations, if not known by the time the agenda is made, then they can be decided if they're able to be, if they just show up here, like you said. But I don't want to take that off of here verbally, because we want people to come. But to the, like you said, to the pleasure of the council, if we have time for it. But I don't want to just say, I don't want to not have it on here, because I think the word visitor, having that open, kind of says something to people who may not be like, I'm going to read till the very end and then see this little, I think that lends to more of a language barrier, just because the name, we're welcoming visitors, is a welcoming thing. But having some word about it on here in a different way, I can understand that too.
Commissioner Sin?
Well, I can live with it either way. I guess my preference would be to keep it on the agenda. But what I'd like to see is, instead of it being kind of buried under number 7, I'd like to see it actually before new business. It just makes it easier for the visitors. It's usually something that's not that big of a deal. We can get out of the way. That way they don't have to sit through perhaps an hour or two of our new business or unfinished business. So I'd like to see it either way, but at least moved up on the agenda.
Thank you. I actually, to be continue, I'm a little contrary here. I agree with the intent here. The only reason why I think actually if we leave it on the agenda, having it after new business, the advantage of that is, as tonight was a good example, we have a couple of issues that are core to our role here. and involved members of the public that have put in a lot of time and effort on a topic that the city must address. We owe them a response. And so it feels fair to me to make sure that those folks are heard first before we get into something that maybe somebody just came up with this evening, you know. So for that reason, I would tend to suggest that the ordering, having it after new business, at least would make some sense, just to make sure that we allow space for those folks that have, you know, already been in the process. So, and hearing sort of all the comments, I do feel like we ought to be able to come up with a way where the advantage of this sort of change is that it does allow this commission to navigate its way through any unknown issue that we don't know right now. We do not know a potential presentation, and I completely agree that we're here to serve the public. We're just volunteers. I mean, we're neighbors, and we all have the intent of doing that. I have witnessed meetings in the past, not of this commission, but I've led a number of public venues, public commissions and committees, and it's interesting what can happen when you have somebody show up that has some issue that actually isn't appropriate for that particular venue, or doesn't fit in very well for that evening, you know, because, you know, we all have limited time as well. So I do tend to think the intent of being able to simply, because all this does is it puts it into the hands of the commission to be able to vote. Are we going to hear this or not? Are we going to hear this tonight, or do we want to recommend come back Tuesday, you know, or next week or whatever?
Is it possible to leave it on there and put that on it?
I think it is.
And we can also put a limit on their time.
Well,
Go ahead.
sorry. That's what I was going to try to clarify. So council has taken off visitor presentations, but I believe then they've got the timer for comments on agenda issues. Is that how that works? Am I understanding that correctly? I always see that 2-minute, you know, the red clock
that's-
that they start. So I guess maybe what my thought on this is that the word presentations is what I'm thinking is the important part here. And presentations is, to me, indicating that it's something that, you know, has been planned and prepared in advance. And, you know, when we've had any of those sorts of things, I think that the best practice is to go through staff so that any visuals, maps, documents, flyer, you know, any of that stuff could be coordinated and available to display. So, you know, I kind of like that the presentation is planned and added to the agenda in advance, but that comments are welcome on any of the agenda items. So when we're talking about the, you know, tree ordinance, and certainly, you know, when the organized trash hauling was going on, there were tons of comments that were coming in. And so being able to manage those and encourage those so that we're soliciting feedback and, you know, making good recommendations, or, you know, kind of taking all things into consideration, that's where I would encourage and really want, you know, more members of the public to come. But when we're talking about presentations, you know, I think some preparation with that and coordination with staff, you know, will help to make that a more effective presentation, rather than someone being able to come in and just talk about whatever they feel like talking about that day and at that time. So that we're making the best use of everyone in the meeting's time. So I'm okay with, you know, that leaving, the visitor presentations leaving the agenda and added back as needed with the language that you guys are talking about, that we're encouraging that. It may not be addressed at that particular meeting, but that we would certainly make time on a future agenda to address the issue and look into it more fully.
Thank you. I hear in some of the active words that I was hearing you talking about, I heard the idea of presentation has a certain meaning to it. And I completely agree with you. If it's actually a presentation, it really should be going through staff, so that, and then it would end up in new business, because it's somebody has a presentation to show us, whether it's information, you know, education or whatever. So having visitor presentations does seem odd to just kind of drop out of the sky. However, hearing some of the other comments from some of the other commissioners, the idea of having, and comment isn't really the right term, I don't know the right word, but something that is not a comment and not a presentation, between the two, like a topic that I'd like to just broach with you, or an issue I'd like to bring to your attention, or, you know what I'm saying? And I don't know the right word, but I feel like having a visitor, fill in the blank with a better word, that is not a presentation, it could lead to a presentation, like, hey, I just had this topic, I just found out about this commission, I wanted to tell you about something, or ask you if you guys have ever done A, B, and C. And we might say, that's a great idea, why don't you do a presentation next month? And you can work with Sean to sort of get it on the agenda, and, you know what I mean? So to keep, by changing the word presentation to something that's down, you know, a little bit more informal, a little, and put a time limit on it. It's a 2-minute thing or whatever. Could potentially do both. And if we still are voting on, although I think 2 minutes, I can't envision us not voting,
Seems-
voting to say no.
Right.
Unless,
Anybody can talk
unless
for 2
somebody
minutes,
comes
yeah.
in and they're screaming, in which case, they should not be speaking. I mean, you're done. I mean, that's, we have rules, you know. Do we have conduct policy?
It's read at council, but not,
Not here, I don't think.
Do we? Because if, as long as, no, not so much? Nothing official?
I don't think so for the commissions that we,
Does the city council have a conduct policy?
yes.
Okay, could we, maybe what we could do is, I'd love to maybe see the conduct policy, and then we could officially adopt it as a commission. And then, depending on how lengthy it is, just put it on the backside of the agenda or something, always. Because, and again, we don't have a lot of public engagement, unfortunately. I mean, I'd love to have people. But the point of talking about this is just in case, right? So the ability to say we still have visitor something, somebody can come up with a better word.
Feedback and ideas or
Yeah, something.
collaborative
Yeah.
public.
Visitor thoughts or something.
That's what we can think about for next meeting.
Yeah.
Is a better word.
So there's still something on the agenda, but it's not
Inviting the public.
presentations. It's something, and it's got a time frame, 2 minutes or whatever. And then let's specify a conduct policy, so if somebody's out of hand, we can shut it down.
Public invitation?
Yeah.
we
Open
gotta be
mic.
careful that it's, yeah,
Open mic?
Honestly, open mic would be better, because you don't want to confuse it with like open meeting, public comment, you know,
Yeah.
which are
Yeah.
official
Yeah.
official things, and go on the record. I mean, I guess this goes on the record, it's
Yeah.
recorded, but open mic, town hall, I mean, it's not that big that it's town hall, but open mic does seem,
Might come in with a little guitar action?
poetry jam.
Just saying.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm hearing I should go back and kind of rework how we are dealing with the visitor presentations, because
Public interest?
your commission does not want to remove that language entirely from the agenda, just a different way of approaching it. And we'll bring back the conduct policy, see if we can glean anything from there. And any other items you'd want me to look at before we table this?
I would like to see if we can dig up conduct policy,
Right.
so we can officially adopt it.
Or at least look at what it says.
Yeah, right, and edit if we think we
Right,
need to.
right, right.
Okay,
One,
anything else? Go ahead.
just thought of one other thing. On item G, it's the duties of the chairperson. I was wondering, you know, we have subcommittees that we form each year, and those subcommittees kind of become the subject matter experts on the issues that we're addressing, and that's not always the chairperson. So I don't know. It's not a big deal, but I would make the suggestion that, I mean, it does say the chair will appoint a representative from the commission, but was trying to, you know, figure out if it almost makes more sense to kind of say the subject matter expert. Well, sorry for brainstorming out loud here. I think it's covered in there. I guess I'll put a never mind, but just as that seems to end up working the best, that it's not necessarily the chair that goes to council meeting, but the person or member of the subcommittee that is most knowledgeable and able to field questions from council is often the best person to represent us at that meeting.
That's a great point, and actually bringing up item G to begin with is good in that, honestly, I have to say, I'm not entirely sure if I've seen this document before. I probably have, I'm sure I have, it was probably in an introduction packet I got, but.
You got an introduction packet?
I'm sure I did.
It was probably like this.
It was very thick.
I don't know that,
Well, maybe
if
a
we're
couple
really
pages.
doing item G right now. I mean, what constitutes an item from the commission? For instance, we just had 2 variances, so technically, the chair should show up at the city council meeting.
So I think
I don't know that that's actually happening.
We did
It's supposed to, I
reports,
think.
like our annual report needs to be brought by the chair to the council.
Okay.
Things like that, or if there's, I know that when someone retired after being on the commission for a long time, I went and introduced her and kind of did an official thank you with pictures and stuff like that, so that was a responsibility at that time. But I think I do like Commissioner Palzer's idea of having the most well-versed commissioner for whatever it is, maybe accompany the chair, and have the chair still be the person that leads
Or
it.
go in.
Or introduces.
Instead.
in their place.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
But
example that I'd have of that was the urban agriculture ordinance, so the chairperson could talk about it. They were, a part of it throughout, but a subcommittee member may be able to go a little bit deeper on some of the facts to support questions that come from council on those sorts of things.
Sean, did we have chairperson showing up for ag discussions at the city
We
council?
did, we had the subcommittee members attending. So if you want to change this, just to ensure we're being accurate, because the chair, we don't have, your commission doesn't have that many items that go to the council, like the planning commission, like the land use permits that always go to the council. So maybe this shouldn't just always be the chair, but they could, the chair will appoint a representative from the commission or subcommittee, or, something like that.
Yeah, or designee. Yeah, I think that's fair, and then procedurally, it should just be that whoever is the chair, if there is a subcommittee and they're going to go in front, we just make sure that the chair knows, hey, we're thinking Bob goes, what do you think? And then the chair could say, well, I want to go too, or whatever. But
And we could
How
also,
about-
modify the temporary committees and add that language too. So that's on page 3, item I. We could just,
It seems easy, you could certainly add that under temporary committees, but I think it's quite easy to just simply say that the chair or a designee.
okay.
And then it can be anybody, and the subcommittee would make sense. Yeah.
I like designee.
Yeah. Which,
It's
but
easy.
that just behooves us that if there's a subcommittee, the chair is aware that subcommittee A, person A, is going to be the person going to the council. So,
I'm wondering if we can actually, if we could retitle that, instead of duties of the chairperson, it could be representation to council.
that.
And
makes
that
sense.
just a commission member shall represent the commission at each city council meeting where a commission item is on the agenda to present, da-da-da-da-da. I don't think we need that final sentence. If the chair is unavailable to attend the meeting, the chair will appoint a representative. So I think with any time that we have had someone go to council to speak about things, we've talked about it in our meeting, or staff has sent an email to ask for volunteers, so we've decided on a person. And it wasn't necessarily the chairperson, it was who's available. So maybe we don't have to have it be, it's the chairperson's responsibility, it's our responsibility as a commission to send someone to represent us.
Well, I think it is fair to say that, first, I totally agree, changing G to representation at council completely makes sense, because that's really what this is about anyway. And I would like to suggest that we just simply, after the chairperson shall represent just insert the chairperson or the chairperson's designee shall represent. And then procedurally, it can be done in all sorts of ways, like we do an email chain that says, hey, Bob's available, but Betty's not, or whatever. And then that allows for a little bit of flexibility from chairperson to chairperson. If they have certain preferences for how they would handle that, they can handle it slightly differently. And then I agree, I think the last sentence then becomes meaningless because the chairperson can already designate.
I agree with all of those ideas.
Yeah, thank you for bringing it up.
And as you sleep on this, make sure and email any other ideas you might have, because your commission was not party to creating this years ago. So, things change, things evolve. Maybe there's something you want to add. But in the meantime, I would recommend tabling, and then I will bring back some modifications along with those conduct policy.
Sounds like a
All right.
superb recommendation.
Thanks.
All right, next item, unfinished business, to which we have none for this evening.
That is excellent.
Next item is visitor. For the last time, we'll use the word presentations.
Consider something.
And I think there's a lot of people vying for that, but we'll move on. Next item, commissioner presentations, which there are none for this evening. And then finally, staff presentations. Sean, you want to walk?
Thank you.
walk
I
us
just
through?
wanted to remind you that our February meeting is being rescheduled to February 25th. That's due to the President's Day holiday. And that's a Thursday, I'm thinking. Thursday rather than a Monday here.
26.
And with that information, I skipped an item. I also wanted to let you know that the annual report, which you helped draft, you did draft your portion, which is the Environmental Commission. And then we also have the sustainability piece in here. And this was put together by the Community Development Department, and it goes into detail about different commissions that our department works with, including the Environmental Commission. And this was presented at the State of the City event in January. And now we'll bring it formally to the City Council on February 25th. That's what I meant to say about February 25th. So that's a City Council meeting, and we are asking for a representative, or if the chairperson wants to attend, or the chairperson wants to appoint a designee. So you don't have to decide tonight. I could send you an email in that regard.
I can make it.
Oh, excellent.
What time is that?
7 PM. February 25th, that's a Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sorry, I got confused on that item. And the next item is what I meant to say, rescheduled February commission meeting. So that'll be rescheduled to Tuesday, February 26th, the day after. And again, due to President's Day holiday. And then the commission usually does its goal setting in January, but we had kind of a full house here tonight, so I thought it would be too much to take on. Plus, we don't have all of our commissioners here. So I am proposing to do a goal-setting meeting prior to the meeting, similar to what we did last year, if that's possible. So that would be Tuesday, February 26th, from 5:45 to 6:45. So I'll send out a notice and see who's available and if that makes sense to handle it that way.
I'd like to, on that topic, I would like to suggest that each of us put a little thought in prior to that and see if we can come up with one or two items to throw out as, what's that? Awesome. Feel free to bring more than one or two items if you wish. A couple dozen might be too many. But I think if we could all bring a few items that we want to throw out, then we can put them in a hopper and talk about them in advance. It might be, if possible, maybe we try to get them to Sean a little bit ahead of time, and she can email the whole group with like the laundry list. Does that make sense?
Perfect.
So, what, maybe we try to get them to you like the Friday prior.
So I'll send out this follow-up email discussing the, I guess just the goal setting would be all that we're,
Yeah.
Could you add just a mention or a reminder in that message about the
chair.
chair and vice chair?
yeah. Yes. Okay. You're always sending me home with homework. Ugh.
You're the best at homework.
Finally, I know this is under staff presentations. I'm going to start putting this under commissioner presentations because you, commissioners, are so good at this. The Maplewood Nature Center, we like to present some of their activities. Of course, the Nature Center, they are our partner in environmental education. So with that, I had a few events that are taking place in February, and I'm hoping the commission could announce those. Oh, you're waiting for me? Here we go. Look at this. And action.
Okay. The life of a Voyager.
Oh, I'm gonna be behind her.
Sorry. Adults, families with children, 7 up. Saturday, February 2nd from 1:30 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Assume the persona of a French voyager. Examine historical replicas of fur trade items. Make a spark from flint and steel. Drill a hole with a pump drill. Learn about snowshoes. Go for a short nature adventure outdoors. At the Maplewood Nature Center, 2659 East 7th Street, Maplewood 55119. Individuals, families, and small scout groups are welcome. Fee is $5 per person, prepaid by January 31st, activity number 163339. Register online at www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com and click on the Register Online Go button. Or call at 651-249-2170.
Winter Woodpecker Walk, Saturday, February 9th, from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. This is for adults and families ages 7 and over with adults. It's a free program. Learn about common woodpeckers in our area. What can they tell us about tree health? Join the naturalists for a woodpecker walk. Tally species and report them on eBird. This is held at the Maplewood Nature Center, which is at 2659 East 7th Street. Pre-register by Thursday, February 7th. Register online at www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com and click on the Register Online-Go button or call 651-249-2170. This is activity number 16340.
We'll do it again. Are you ready? Not that one. Coyote Moon, snowshoe by the light of the moon. For adults and families ages 6 and above with adult. Tuesday, February 19th, 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. It's magical, swishing through the snow across the pond. Needs 6 inches of snow for snowshoeing. We'll see if we can spy coyote tracks and more. Coyotes are here to stay in our urban landscape. Discover a few pointers about how to live together with Wile E. Coyote. Back at the Visitor Center, we'll fill our mugs, bring one from home, please, with hot cider and share some readings and stories about this legacy trickster. At the Maplewood Nature Center at 2659 East 7th Street in Maplewood, 55119. To register, go to www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com and click on the Register Online Go button. Call 651-249-2170 if you need help registering. The fee is $5 per person, prepay by Sunday, February 17th. The activity number is 16341.
Native seed treatments for beginners, for adults and families with children 14 and over. Saturday, February 23rd, from 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. Do you want to start native plants organically by seed, but are not sure how to stratify or scarify seed, or even what the words stratify and scarify mean? Try 3 different strategies to increase seed germination, then bring seeds home for your yard. We will recommend reference materials to help you imitate nature. Bring a small, sturdy cardboard box, at least 8.5 by 11 inches. The event is at the Maplewood Nature Center, 2659 East 7th Street. The fee is $6 per person, prepay by Monday, February 18th, please. Activity number 16342. You can register online at www.maplewoodnaturecenter.com and click on the Register Online-Go button, or call 651-249-2170. All right, well, I think that's everything for our meeting. Okay, I think that's everything for our meeting, so motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
I second.
So moved, adjourned.